Cool. All right. When did you decide to not do like what every other girl your age was probably doing and become like full time badass? When did that happen?
Thank you, thank you. Gosh, I don't think I've ever been asked that specifically. Growing up, I got into bodybuilding pretty early. I went to college. I was already exposed to like the bodybuilding scene, and I don't know, like any 18-year-old, I was like, school is fun, sure, but I'd rather spend more time in the gym and working on, I don't know, pursuing this fitness thing. So, really, that's when like I would say fitness became like a major priority, and really like the career side of it took off because I did my first show and I got into the competition space. But I mean, like over the last 10 years, like the way that's looked has evolved. Like it's completely different now than when it was what it was back then.
Yeah, for sure. What drew you to it initially? What was like the appeal of it?
Um, I think at the time, so growing up, there were a lot of female idols that I had that were very sporty. I liked that physique that, was a little different than like what you would traditionally see with like celebrities and like in the magazines like Victoria's Secrets. You'd see girls that are very skinny, and it never really resonated with me. I mean, it seemed like a very dead end path, like, okay, just get smaller and smaller. And then in 2014, the bikini division became popularized. I think it really came around a few years before that. And I saw these girls that had curves. I mean, like they had muscle and they were still very feminine. They were still women. But frankly, like that look was very new. And it was something that I think socially was like, I would say I identified more with than the traditional, just like, starve yourself down and just try to be next to nothing. So when I saw girls getting into the sport and doing well, I mean, like it really attracted me. And I mean, like I really liked the aspect of being able to weight train and then take my body further and like add more rather than take away
Mm-hmm.
take away less. Yeah.
Yeah, no, here for sure. How do you look at like the space now as it is? Is it like popular right now?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the bikini division as a whole, the bikini is, I mean, the easiest to get into because the degree of muscularity is much less than the other divisions. And it truly is the division that you can still, like, you can train for a couple years and you can find yourself into it, at least at the regional level. And say absolutely with the presence of social media and like how it's taken off there. There's a lot of new eyes in the space. I mean, like as a coach, I find that there's a lot of people who, kind of catch wind of bodybuilding within like the bikini space, wellness space, and they're like, yeah, I want to get on stage, I want to do that without really understanding what it takes or how long of a process it can actually be to build that like competitive physique.
Mm-hmm. Okay, touch on what it takes. Take me through like a let's say you have a show in 6 months. What does that look like for you?
Well, for me at this point, being a professional, I mean, it is something that you would kind of plan strategically, but realistically, you're looking at having to cut down weight, cut down to a low body fat percentage. And I mean, like, you'll hear people throw out, like, okay, bikini competitors, they only get to like 15 to 16%, but I mean, like, body fat percentage in general, it's highly variable, and it's something that I mean like is often mistracked, and people will like misattribute certain values. Really, it comes down to how much muscle you have in determining how much weight you need to lose. Because within bikini, it's not just about, it's not like with open bodybuilding where it's like you can pretty much get as big as you want and as lean as you can get. And that's going to probably do pretty well. With bikini, you can very much get knocked down from being too lean. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I think a lot of people, they will tend to compensate for. They'll get too lean. They'll find themselves like, okay, I don't have enough muscle. So to get that visibility, like in the tie-ins, for instance, okay, I'm just going to keep shaving down until I get to the point where I can see that visibility, which in reality it kind of misses the mark entirely, because then it's like you're then just very skinny, very lean, and you lose that like bikini-esque shape that you're
Mm-hmm.
actually judged for. So For me, I map out my timelines, and not a lot of athletes do this. So I'm also self coached. And for my preps, like I'm planning it even before we start. So I know generally how much weight I need to lose, or roughly, like we're just aiming for, okay, this is going to be my stage weight. What that looks like in terms of the actual rate of loss per week. I mean, it's pretty linear. I don't really believe in the extremes of like, okay, let's lose, let's say 20 pounds in 10 weeks, which some people, they prefer that method, but I feel like it's not very strategic and tends to lead you to a worse look come stage. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of boring stuff, a lot of planning on my end, but getting an actual contest prep shape, I mean, like it really just comes down to fat loss.
Okay, yeah. Now, that's something though, that being self-coached, that's pretty cool. You never worked with a coach at all?
No, I have previously. So I've competed in 14 shows. Early on, first four shows, I coached myself. I had a coach help me like my third show, but it was one of those where like I was already competing, already ready. And he's last minute like, hey, can I come coach you for free? It wasn't actually really a lot of help. Changed everything. I don't really feel like the approach yielded a much better result. When I turned pro, I worked with a coach at that point, a different person entirely. I did a few shows with them, and it was okay. But I mean, like, it was very much under the guise, like, they were going to keep a second set of eyes on me. But really, like, when it came down to training, when it came down to posing, they were pretty hands off. Worked with a close friend for coaching at one point. So across the board, I've had a total of three coaches, but I mean, really within that, I've always been independent. And the last season that I had my mentor, who's a 212 bodybuilder now, open bodybuilder, John Jewett. He was a pretty big influence in that, and just ensuring that I learned how to self-coach at the pro level, which was a really cool experience. I mean, not many people get that opportunity where with him, it was like, hey, I want to self-coach. I want to learn how to do that at this level and do it correctly. And he actually extended that offer, like, hey, well, let me be your second set of eyes, and I can make sure you don't do anything terribly wrong, or if you're starting to veer off track, I can pull you back in.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's especially like bodybuilding, like the strategic part of it is, in my opinion, like the toughest part of it. Because running, for example, I've been running for all my life. That's or like combat sports, for example. You just do it, you get better at it. But in the gym, it doesn't work like that. You can go for a month straight, you don't get better at it. Like 80% of it is strategic. So
Yeah.
that's something. Yeah.
I mean, it's something where for a lot of people, they're just spinning their wheels. They're not actually making progress. So, something that attracts me, and I would say is a little different than how other people approach the sport, is I really focus on the objective changes. So, I think like when you look at like your emotions, there's so much subjectivity that comes with these divisions and how they're judged. And really, I mean, like your structure is going to be a large limiting factor. I mean, it's going to determine where you need to put on more muscle, how you need to pose, your predisposition to where you store fat. That's going to be huge in terms of like how much body fat you actually have to lose. Because in my division, for instance, like the glutes are such a main like centerpiece with what we're judged on. But you take like some girls, they don't store any body fat in their glutes and their legs. It's all in their midsection. Well, that's problematic in a different way, but they might find that like that tie-in visibility is very easy to hit like early on in a prep, yet their midsection is still very soft and very imbalanced. And within that, it's like, okay, how someone who stores body fat differently, they might need to take a different approach. They might need to lose more body fat technically. They might need to technically have less muscle because they could look potentially too lean if, let's say, their lower body is considered overdeveloped relative to the body fat covering it. But no, I think there's a lot of nuance based on what the individual's bringing to that prep, based on their attitude, their execution. But on the performance side, yes, there is a lot of misunderstanding around like how to actually get better, and even within the realm of hypertrophy.
Hmm.
I'm very envious of other other objective sports when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine for sure. What are your like KPIs then? Like, how do you measure success in the sport for yourself?
I love that. So For me, I do put a pretty hefty like value into the way that you approach prep. I've done preps where the execution was very adherent. So adherence was exactly what was given according to the plan. But the efficiency, like the efficiency behind like the weight that was lost and how it was lost, and then the reverb afterwards, like post show, that's really where I judge like the success of a prep is, could this have been done easier? Could this have been done in a way that incurred less collateral? And really like, the placing, that's something that a lot of people, they get so lost in. And I mean, like, I'm very competitive, I'm very hard on myself, but at the end of the day, if you have 20 girls on stage and they're all like, just slightly different, it's like, if you're going to get beat, you want to be beat by people that objectively look better than you. And that's not something you can control. So it's like not something you can necessarily prepare for. All you can do is like bring your best package. And like in your case with running, you can improve your time, you can improve your capacity, and reduce the likelihood that you're beat because of something that's in your control. So I mean, big things for me, I don't like to make silly mistakes when it comes to stage. So on the presentation side, like, your tan, your hair, your makeup, those are all super girly things, but it's like, okay, so those are very much in your control for the most part. So those shouldn't be areas that like you flop on, or like your presentation, your posing, like those are all things that you have so much time to prepare with. Same thing with the fat loss. Like, I mean, like the idea, like some people will fall behind and their progress will begin to slow. And rather than like capitalize on this and be like, okay, I need to get ahead, I need to make up for lost time, they'll wait until the end, and then they'll have to take extremes in order to hit that stage look. And to me, it's like at the beginning of prep, like you should know roughly like how long it's going to take for you to lose body fat. And really the idea around like stalls and like plateaus, like those are things that a lot of people run into, and they create a lot of ambiguity around like, well, why did this happen? But for the most part, fat loss is extremely straightforward. I mean, it is just input versus output. But if you're not monitoring the right variables, if you're not taking, a good inventory of the energy balance, well then yeah, like you're going to fall behind and you're going to be confused and probably put in a position where you do have to take extremes, which then is ultimately going to impact that look come show day.
That's a good one though. Like, do you see that like from like a biological standpoint, it's just calories in, calories out? That's your approach to weight loss? How do you see that?
For the most part, yeah, I do. I mean, like when it comes to a deficit, like if someone, I can't tell you how many people have come to me in the last year who have been like, I'm weight loss resistant. Like my last coach had me at like my,
Heard that one before, yeah.
truly. And it's, I mean, like I approach it more with like curiosity, like, okay, well, let's look at what you've done so far. Let's get a clear picture of what your adherence is like. But realistically, and I mean, like, I've never had someone who's come to me who hasn't been able to lose weight. Like, that doesn't exist. And truly, like, there are people that are like, oh, I didn't know I needed to eat this little in order to see the scale go down. And I'm like, yeah, that's based on your activity. It's because you're very sedentary. It's because you get in 3,000 steps a day. It's because you don't do cardio, or the cardio you do is very low intensity. It's not very, like, it doesn't account for a high degree of output. Your training sucks. Like, it's very like passive. So it's like, there's typically always an explanation when someone is like stalled or when they're having slower progress. And sadly, I think a big part of it is just a miscalculation. To lose a pound of body fat every week, you have to be in a 500 calorie deficit a day. It is like, I believe it's as simple as that. I think the food reporting is an area people go very, very wrong with. They don't realize how much they're actually eating. And then once they see like, okay, I thought I was eating 14 or 1500, I'm actually eating 19. It's like, there's your deficit right there. If you were actually eating 14 or 1500, you would drop and you would see that result on your scale weight.
Why is that food reporting wrong? What did they do?
I guess, underestimate what they're eating. So
Like portion size?
portion sizes,
Right.
food selection. So for individuals who are like following a meal plan, I think it's really easy to, eat the same thing every single day, and have food reporting be constant. But then there are the cases where you use oils, you use condiments, the cooking processes, you lose water, like there's water loss amongst like rice, potatoes, any of your carb sources. And even within that, like just like potatoes, that's one thing that I use a lot of, I use an example for clients is like, if you are batch prepping, like in your air fryer, you're like, okay, I'm going to cut up 200 grams of potatoes and air fry them, weigh them again after, and just see what it comes out to. The grams and carbs didn't change, but the weight did. So if you're cooking it, and like this is one of like the lost arguments, like, do I weigh things raw or cooked? And it's like, well, if it's not hindering your ability to lose fat, if you're still seeing that progress, maybe it's not a big deal to weigh it cooked. But if you're someone who's like, hey, I'm not seeing the progress I want to see, I think I'm doing everything right, the first thing I go to is food reporting.
Interesting. I was talking to a guy who was weighing like 230, like a big dude. He didn't eat carbs at all. Would you try that? Would that be a good one on a bodybuilding bulk, you think?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of no carb diets. Like, I mean, what about you? What is your
I've never
fat?
tried it. I'm fascinated by it though. I think it would be like good for like brain function and everything. Because after, I don't know if you experienced that. I'm sure you do. Like carb coma, like that's like a real thing for me.
No,
So
totally.
yeah.
So we actually need, it's like 120 grams for cognitive function as a baseline. It's not to say people who eat lower carbs that they can't operate cognitively, but your brain does need glucose, and that's where I think a lot of people they don't necessarily understand like the immediate weight loss that comes when you switch from a moderate carb diet to a no carb diet. And so, I mean, like you're just eating carbs from fruits and vegetables potentially, which still has some degree of carb intake from it. For every 1 gram of carb, there's 3 to 4 grams of water that's going to be then pulled into the muscles. So if you were to look at like your scale weight and overnight you drop a significant amount of carbs, 450 grams roughly makes up a pound of body weight. So when we look at like overnight pulling like a good amount of carbs, I mean like 100 grams of carbs, 200 grams of carbs, you're going to see that immediately drop off on scale weight. And I think that's where a lot of people are misled, because then they see, oh, hey, I lost a bunch of weight overnight just from switching to no carbs. It's like as soon as you put those carbs back in, that amount of weight that you lost, exactly that amount will come back.
Yeah, that's something. Have you figured out why someone would like two people, they both weigh like 200 pounds. One needs 4,000 calories to maintain. The other one needs 3,000. Have you like definitively figured that one out? Because I don't. I haven't.
Okay, we'll case study this. So
Okay.
body fats are roughly the same, right? Is
All
that
right.
what?
Just
Okay.
identical like body composition was.
Okay. So my boyfriend is about 200 pounds. He Olympic weightlifts, and he loses off 3,500 calories. And he like 4,200, 4,300 is a very mild surplus. Like we're talking like barely above his maintenance. His steps are pretty reasonable. So I mean like 7,000, 8,000, not extremely high. It'd be different if they were like 15, 20,000 a day. That'd be insane. Obviously he's burning a lot of calories. Maybe that's why he needs more food. This guy like snatches and like clean and jerks multiple times a week, squats a ridiculous amount. Like, I mean, he tries to kill himself in the gym every single time. And it's very impressive. And he is like the pinnacle in my mind of like, okay, that is someone who in their weightlifting, like they are incurring so much damage. And because of that, not just, yes, in the session, like you burn through calories, but it's outside of the session where then you're needing that fuel, because you can really only recover through two means: food or sleep. And sleep is kind of capped out. It's not like you're going to sleep for 20 hours, even if you need more recovery. Like max probably going to sleep like 10 hours, maybe a little bit more. Even then it's like, okay, so you're going to need some kind of energy substrate, so in the form of food, to repair that muscle damage. So I think for a lot of people, when I see someone who, let's say, is like more of a hard gainer, I think a lot of it has to do with like objectively how much muscle damage or how much damage they're doing from an output standpoint typically through resistance training that they're incurring on a regular basis.
Interesting. I still don't fully understand it, but it is interesting. That's for sure.
Maybe in plain speak, I think I have people that they don't need as much food. And
Yeah.
the two things that I look to when I see someone who's complaining about, like, I want to eat more, but I tend to gain weight. I look at food reporting. So I'm like, is there any way that potentially maybe you're eating more than you think you are? So that could be the person who goes out to eat and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to swap my chicken and rice meal. I'm going to swap that for a salad at Panera, or like, something that is generally simple, but might have additional calories that they don't realize. So typically I'm looking at food reporting. Is it possible you're eating more than you think you're eating? Or in their training, I'll ask them to send me training videos, which I do for all my clients. And truly, that is the most telling when it comes to how much muscle someone's burnt, or so how much energy, how many calories someone's burning, is how intensely they're training. So when I look at like a set of squats or look at a set of RDLs, it's like, how close are they taking that set to failure? And is it truly failure for them? Like, is there truly a deceleration in their velocity on those final reps? And if that's not occurring, that's usually a sign to me. I'm like, okay, this person they have an ability to train harder. So if they want to eat more, it's going to probably require that they train a little more intensely.
You always do failure every set?
Near failure. So not so like objectively, like if failure is like on a squat, you go down and you can't come back up. If that's RAR of 0 or RPE 10 for listeners, I want to shoot for just under that. So RAR 1 to 2 or RPE 8 to 9.
Yeah, gotcha. Sure.
What about
How would you? What's that?
What about you? Is that how you train?
Is that how I train? I'd say so. I've worked with coaches in the past. It's a tough one though. Like gaining weight. Like I said, it's from a strategic standpoint, it's definitely tough. I don't know. Like the running's easy. I just do it. I get better at it. So I had a coach in the past for nutrition. Yeah, he taught me to like go failure all the way, always. So that's what I still do. But
amazing,
yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'm eating 4,200 calories right now, and I'm at maintenance. So, but I'm running twice a day. So there's that.
I mean, that's
probably the cardio.
Cardiovascular health too, and like also just to keep any like fat gain from the food, keeping it at bay, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Sure. How would you say your training methodology changed from or different from when you started out? Like, what are the biggest changes you've made? Things you've learned?
Biggest changes. Right now, my volume is scaled back tremendously. So, the last year, I mean, I attribute this to my boyfriend. He is a chiropractor and he works, he owns the company Prescript. So specifically his focus is on biomechanics and anatomy. And once I started working with him, really at that point, like I knew that my training wasn't optimized. Like it was good and I was training hard, but I didn't really understand exercise order and selection, volume allocation, how to really design my training split in a way that allowed me to recover session to session. And granted, I mean, like a big part of what I've been able to develop within my own training has been simplifying what I'm doing. And instead of, let's say, like going in for listeners, like just to give them a reference point, instead of doing, let's say, 25 working sets in a session. Obviously that's too high, especially if we're talking about lower body where I'm training lower 3 days a week. It's like, okay, well, you're going to cap your intensity that you can take those working sets to just on the basis that you have that much volume and you're doing that at that frequency on a weekly basis. So what I've done is assigned really the most important movements, so hinging and squat patterns to the beginning of my workout, making it to where I can put everything I have into those lifts. And the focus has predominantly been maintaining that intensity, so that deceleration by the final 1 or 2 reps, performing these movements in a way that really does emphasize glute bias, so hip flexion, so working in the lengthened and the mid-range positions. But prior to that, gosh, I mean, like I would say generally, like I was doing a lot of shortened range, so hip thrust, glute extension, abduction, and like it's not that I wasn't hinging. I was still hinging, but I wasn't doing it with the intention of continuing to progress. I didn't have an understanding of like pelvic stability, of really making sure that my hips were truly functional. So within that, I've been able to load a lot better and more linearly.
What does the split look like now on a weekly basis?
Monday, Friday are lower days that are very intense. The sessions are very similar. I mean, like I make kind of very minor swaps to how I load the hinge and how I load the split squat. Wednesday, I'll typically do lower, but there's an understanding that I'm still going to be pretty fucked up from Monday's lower session. So even if the weight isn't the same, the intention is to go in to move to accrue the volume that I'm able to lift. Like for this week, for instance, I typically batch my recording. So I'll do like 4 to 6 podcasts in a day. So that was yesterday for me. So because of that Wednesday, I didn't necessarily intend to train. Monday's session was supposed to be my legs A, so my really intense session. But I got back from travel. Sleep was dysregulated. Food was a little bit lower, so like I didn't lift very heavy on Monday. I still did my normal workout, but at the same time, it wasn't anything spectacular. It really sucked, honestly. Yesterday, I felt really good after recording, so I ended up having a much later session. So without pre-workout, I was able to still pull a lot of weight, and it was a really good session. But now today, I'm probably going to have a more moderate session on Friday. So those lower days, I mean, are in some form or facet auto-regulated with the exercises being consistent. Tuesday and Thursday are upper days. I typically do 1 push, 1 pull. One of those days is typically more function based, but it's really just focusing on scapular stability. So making sure if I am really taxed from one of the lower days that I'm doing what I can to put me in a position where I've recovered adequately so I'm ready for that next preceding lower day.
Are things you do specifically for recovery? They're like maybe unconventional or things you've on yourself discovered?
Probably not what you're referring to, not like sauna or cold plunge. I'll do those periodically. Not cold plunge. I'm not a fan of it. But
No?
it's not, it's, yeah, it's not something I'm a big fan of. I do like sauna, and that's something, I mean, with less travel, I'll be doing more of, but that's just more for, I guess we could say stress management, recovery.
Sure.
But really within like the warm-ups, that's where a lot of the function-based movements are. So rather than just strictly focusing on hypertrophy and like working the delts or working the lats, the focus is like, okay, let's create a very unstable environment for the scapula and let's challenge it under adequate load.
Gotcha. More like the fitness, like the workout itself, right? Like where does your mind go? Like in a tough set, where does it go? I always love asking that question. Like people have different methodologies for it. What do you do? Like you stay all calm or you get hyped up? What do you do?
No, I'm pretty calm. I'm calm in some regard. Compared, like one end of the spectrum is like the person who's like, I don't know, yelling, like very,
Right.
I don't know, theatrical. Mentally, what I do or what's helped me make sure that I can achieve that intensity that I'm after, especially on those lower days. I really try to pick a weight for my working sets. Yes, that I can maintain like correct positioning and I can, perform correctly, but I'm trying to pick a weight that scares me or that I'm like, oh, you can't fucking lift this. Like, there's no way. Like, I want something that basically, if I'm doing 12 reps of an RDL, I want the first 3 reps, I want to regret picking that weight. I want to be like, oh, like there's no way you're going to get 12. Like you're going to have to focus so hard to get to 10 reps.
Right.
And if I'm not feeling that by like rep 6, if I'm not like intimidated and wondering how I'm going to finish it, then I'm like, you probably should have gone up. So then that's like a mental note for next week. It's like, or next session, I'm like, okay, you did that for 95s. Okay, next week you need to do 100s or 110s.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's funny, right? Everyone's like different. They like leave the gym and they're all, I don't know, emotional and stuff. It's funny.
How do
I
you
tend to do
get,
that though. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I like, I don't know, think of someone I hate or something. That's, yeah. At times it works, but
Yeah. It can work. I don't know. When I get like, when I'm upset, like about, I don't know, a client or like a business thing, or I don't know, just something that's like, I'm just going into my workout pissed. I don't feel like I'm more productive. I'm mad. Like I'm pissed then that like, okay, this person or this instance is robbing me from the attention I want to put towards the workout. Yeah, I don't train well when I have that like big, like, I don't know, a big distractor like that. But I do like, because my boyfriend is so strong, that was a really big motivator when we started dating. Is like, he asked if we were going to work out together. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't expect that. So it's like, when he asked that, I was like, shit, I have to, he's really strong. Like, I don't want him to think I'm like wimpy or that I'm like, I don't know, like posting out. So I was like, okay, like when he like goes to the bathroom, I want him to come back. I don't want him to be surprised how much weight I'm lifting. I don't know, continuing to do that, it's like, it's a really good positive reinforcement for me. Cause like, he doesn't blow smoke. So like, if he's like, oh, you could do more, like he'll just say that. But yeah, that's, I would say, the other way that I
yeah,
find that motivation.
good one. When did you decide to get into coaching? What was that journey like?
I started coaching pretty early. Like, I mean, I had done a few shows at that point, and it was just very simple. I was helping people with macronutrients. I started taking on some prep clients who really liked how I prep myself and how I was sharing that on social media. So, I mean, that was 2015. Like, I was very, very young. Really, the consultations, they started taking off, and really, I would say, like, the more comprehensive coaching developed into what it is today in 2022. So, I mean, it's still fairly recent. There's a lot of people who, they work with coaches, they're not getting results, or they're not getting the answers that they're seeking, or just frankly, the coaching fit is not very good. So, you know, they're paying for a service they're not happy with. They don't really understand what they're doing, or in some cases, they're being told to do things that are just unsafe.
Yeah. You enjoy it working with these people? I can imagine at times it's like, you know, you know.
It's a pain in the dick a lot of the times. Yes.
Okay,
Like,
right.
so yeah, like that's the thing. There are clients I really like working with that I am very proud of, and like they challenge me in a positive way. Then there are clients, like there's another end of the spectrum that really makes me question, like, I'm like, man, like what do I need to do as a coach, like to help this person like see the delusion? Because I don't know, I don't get a lot of delusional clients, but I get a lot of clients who are very lost and they don't really understand how to go about learning, and they are misplacing a lot of the attention that frankly needs to be on like big levers, the important things, and they're putting it in on the minutia. But I'm very honest, and you know, I'm very like empathetic and kind. I'm not one of those coaches that's like, it's my way or the highway. But I am very clear when someone's upset, or when they're just like, oh, I feel like I should be getting more progress. If their actions don't really match what their expectations are, well, then there's a way to lay that out and be like, hey, like, this is exactly why. And like, I've had the clients that literally, like, as soon as I get their check-in, like, it's just like, it's an eye roll. Cause I'm like, this again, like every week you're going to have something new. And like, some people just suck to work with. Some people are not fun, and they're just, no matter what you do, they're not going to be happy. And I think like as a coach, being able to recognize like, hey, like you can only help someone as much as they want to help themselves. I think that's a really important key, like to maintaining, I don't know, your passion for it.
Yeah, for sure. And those people, that's in every industry, right? That's a thing.
Absolutely.
You have like a proudest coaching moment, like something transformative to your clients happen?
Yeah, they're I mean, the clients that are like big transformation clients that lose like 50, 60, 70 pounds, like for them, I'm so happy, because I'm like, yo, like you will be on this earth longer because you lost this weight. Those clients, I mean, like, I do feel a lot of sentiment towards, because I'm like, your quality of life, like, you're going to have an easier time getting out of bed in the morning. Like, you are going to realistically hate yourself less, because a lot of those people that I've worked with who have come to me, they're like, I don't know how to fix this. Like, I don't know how to undo the decisions that I've made, and it's really affecting my mental health. So clients where they are very, I would say, disabled, and like are disabled in a way, and very hopeless. It's really cool to turn the other page and be like, okay, this is how you're going to do it. And now you have the tools and you have this skill set that hopefully you can put in place even after we stop working together. Those are all very, very rewarding. But then also the clients who historically have just been very distraught around like training, or have had like very solid beliefs into, I have to do a ton of volume, or I have to eat no food, or I have to take a lot of drugs in order to get this physique, to be able to teach them and show them like, hey, that's not the case at all. Like, it really does come down to the big levers, and like making sure that we're doing the fundamental things, and then all of these other enhancements, all of these other add-ons, like they can augment what you're already doing.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Like a big part of the fitness world is like short-term goals, right? You have a view on longevity, especially with the with gear and everything.
I guess in what facet?
Like, I woke up the other day in the middle of the night. I was like, fuck, I have till probably like 10 years left of training, and then I'm like 35 and then I'm done. You have a view on that? Like, how do you deal with that? I do.
Very pessimistically.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm the same way. I'm 29, and like, I'm like, okay, I've got like 6 more hot years that I can be in bikini, and then after that, like, I'm just gonna, it's like, and I mean,
You're
I'm very
done.
self-deprecating. Like, yeah, like when I turn 30, I'm gonna be very sad. But, in all seriousness, like, I think when it comes to, having longevity and training in the sport of like, I don't know, physique enhancements as a whole. Because even for listeners who are not bodybuilders, or who don't have any aspirations to compete, but they want to modify their physique, the thing, I guess the thing that really got me into understanding more about physique modification, like augmenting your physique, was the autonomy that it gives you. Because I mean, like, I think for a lot of people, both men and women, you're kind of shackled by this idea that like, okay, how you wake up if you're a little too high body fat, or if you're not as big as you want to be. It's like, for a long time early on, like as an adolescent, as an early adult, I was like, I feel like the only answer is to eat nothing and to do a lot of cardio, and to feel like I have some agency over how I build my physique, and I have the tools and the knowledge, and I don't have to outsource that to someone who probably is going to scam me and just take my money and not do a very good job. That's very empowering. And I think that's something that, like, I mean, like, even outside of being on stage, makes me feel motivated, like in taking care of my body, and continuing to go through fat loss phases, build phases, because then I can see, I can be like, okay, this is something that no matter the age, no matter what I end up doing with the sport, like, I still have the ability to look the way that makes me feel confident, that makes me feel empowered, and ultimately is going to keep me on this earth longer and with a higher quality of life, and not like crippled and just very decrepit at an early age. So I don't know. I think that is empowering when you talk about, like, I just looking down towards the grave. It's like, well, it's going to come eventually. I might as well improve the good years I have until then, and everything I'm doing now, like the way I eat, the way I train. Okay, that is allowing for a longer period of time, feeling good, and like not being limited by physical capacity.
Yeah. For like training, like the amount of time you have, would you say you've found a way to like leave your physique like as it is, like the sport as it is, and have your self-image and your self-respect, like as esteem, come from somewhere else? Because I think a lot of people deal with that, especially in this sport.
Yes, yeah. I told this story a few days ago. It's like, most of my career, I've been very results oriented. and everything has been tied around like how I placed. And I've been very desperate to make better placings and to perform better, because I thought it would make me happier. And it wasn't until I turned pro, and then I got second at my pro debut next to a former Miss Olympia, like Ashley Kay. Like, she's the very top of our sport. So for my pro debut to place that well, and it was like a 1 point difference. Like, to do that well, I'm like, man, okay, like this is objectively the best I could have done as opposed to just winning. But the way I did it, I was not proud of it. I was not proud of like the process, the prep itself. I worked with a coach and it was designed terribly. Like, the extremes were just so unnecessary. And like, there were so many points in which like we could have taken a better approach, but I trusted him, and I all I cared about was winning. So it was like, I'm going to do what he says, and then I'll deal with the collateral after. And it was that gap in between that season and the next season that I was like, okay, like, I've proven to myself, like, I'm good at this subjectively. I still have improvements I can make, but I'm in contention for doing well. But I'm not gonna keep doing this. It's not really worth it if I have to do what I just did, because that was just senseless. It was very inefficient, and that just goes against like my moral code of ethics and just really how I operate as a person. Like, I think that's very silly to go about any kind of endeavor and to do it the wrong way, which objectively it felt very much like the wrong way. So the next season I went into and I was like, okay, I'm going to coach myself and I'm going to do all the things that I think we should have done the last season. And this is the one where I worked with John as my mentor. So kind of laid out like, here's what I'm thinking. It's very public too, about like week to week, like check-ins. I was like talking about like the decision making. I was better about my drug use. I was better about the fat loss. It was better. Like, I got so lean, like so unnecessarily lean, but it was very impressive to me that like I was able to do that. And that, honestly, that was a complete 180 in terms of mindset. And it proved to me, and it shifted my perspective. I'm like, I care so much more about like the way that I do these things, not just the placing. And that, like, that act really took me somewhere where I'm like, I can compete again and I'm going to do it on my terms, but it does mean more if I'm happy with the way I do this. And that entails the progress and the process off stage as opposed to just the placing.
I hear you. Yeah. For the next 6 years, what's still on the list? What do you want to achieve? Till you're 35 and you're done.
Yeah, right. No, I do want to compete again. I just finished nursing school, and this year was all about making up for that lost time. I was still coaching and still focusing on my business during that time, but it was 2 years that were very long and very time consuming. So this year I started bringing on employees under me to begin scaling my business. Really what it comes down to is I want to leave a footprint in the space of like female athletes, like, you know, whether they're competitors or not. But I want people to understand that, like, when it comes especially to the supplementation side, is that like a lot of what's being done is so wrong. Like, it's very, very poor execution, but it's also very risky. And it's like, I have 3 calls later today. All of the individuals, completely different people, all of them are like, I'm coming from coaches who want me to take Winstrol, want me to take Anavar for 24 weeks. And it's like, these are all mishaps that if they're taking the wrong thing, which in the case Winstrol would be the wrong thing for all female athletes, it's like, you could begin like the beginning stages of a sex change. And like, to me, it's the fact that like there isn't enough knowledge or discussion around this openly within the space. So what I want to do, I have some exciting things in 2025 that I think are going to continue to help get that message out. But I really think it just comes down to continuing to spread the information that has helped me make better decisions along the way. I don't know. Eventually, I want to retire and then like go live in the woods in a cabin somewhere and just like. But I think we're still a little bit ways off of that. But I do want to compete. I do want to qualify for the Olympia. I want to take the endeavors a little bit further there, but all in due time.
I love it. That's cool. Where can the people find you?
So all of my handles are Cory_fit, so CORY_FIT, YouTube channel. I have my own podcast, the Self-Selecting Podcast. I do offer one-time consultations, even if you have a coach. Whether you're a physique athlete or not, male, females, that's something that I think can be of really good value.